Hello, and welcome to the Fighting Moose Podcast. I'm your host and narrator, Jason Hendrickson. This is a podcast where I retell stories, some fictional and some historical, that can be enjoyed by people of all ages. If you remember from last episode, we met Hazel and Bushytail, who were two city squirrels lost in the woods. Today, we actually start at the beginning of their story. After listening to the podcast last night, John asked me to read the next story in the book, but I figured it would probably be best to go back to the beginning. So today, we read the story in Squirrel Town from the book Hazel, Squirrel, and Other Stories, written by Howard B. Famous. As I was sitting here writing out this opening segment, it dawned on me that I didn't really do any ghost stories for Halloween for the podcast. I guess now I just have to read Christmas stories for the next 2 months. Not really. I won't torture you guys like that. I see people posting stuff on social media about how, now that Halloween is over, it's time for Christmas. And of course, I have to say, whoa, pump the brakes. We need to get through Thanksgiving first before we get to Christmas. Anyway, I'll try and do better here in November with some more festive Thanksgiving stories, or possibly just some turkey stories. Now, let's turn to today's story. I hope you enjoy. Let's begin.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
To go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
In Squirrel Town. "Come, little sleepy eyes, it's time to get up," said Mrs. Squirrel one morning. But little Bushytail was having such a nice dream about a wonderful tree where all kinds of nuts grew side by side on the same branch that he did not answer. Only his eyelids quivered ever so little, so his mother knew he was pretending. Come, she repeated. "Little Hazel Squirrel is up and playing outside." In a twinkling, he had jumped out of bed and pressed his furry little nose against the window pane. Little Hazel was playing far out on a leafy branch with one eye on Bushytail's house, nestled in a forked limb close to the trunk. She waved her lovely gray tail when she saw him and began chattering very fast. "Wait a minute," Bushytail called back. "I'll be down in a jiffy." And he was in such a hurry that he tied his tie on sideways and brushed his furry tail the wrong way, which made him look very funny. He even forgot to take a bite of the nice breakfast his mother had left on the table for him. Right through the window he bounded, instead of walking through the door as he had been taught to do, and landed close beside Hazel, far out on the leafy bough. "Oh, Hazel," he cried, "I've had the loveliest dream." "You old sleepyhead," she answered. "You lay abed dreaming when you might be out playing in the fresh air." "Hazel," Bushytail began, teetering up and down on the branch in his excitement, "I'm sick of peanuts, aren't you?" "No," she answered. "I love them. Mother says they make my coat thick and sleek." They were city squirrels, you know, who lived in a park and had their daily supply of peanuts left at their door by the park keeper. "No, I'm not sick of peanuts," she continued, "but what has that to do with your dream?" "Everything," he went on. "Oh, Hazel, I dreamed of a most wonderful tree where all kinds of nuts, hickory, walnuts, chestnuts, and hazelnuts, grew side by side on the same branch. We must hurry and get there before they are all gone." And he jumped up so quickly that Hazel went spinning round and round the branch she was holding onto with her sharp little claws. Now Hazel was a good little squirrel who always talked things over with her mother, so as they were hurrying away across the park, she suddenly stopped. "I forgot to tell Mother where I was going," she said. Her playfellow grabbed her by the tail. "It's to be a surprise," he whispered. "We will make little baskets of dry twigs and carry home enough for everybody." This sounded fine. The pink in the sky was by now beginning to fade. Presently Mr. Sun poked his head over the hilltops far away. He saw the runaway children, and he thought to give them a scare that would send them home. So he bounded out from behind a cloud and sent a long, dark shadow right across the path in front of them. "Oh my!" cried Hazel. "What's that?" Both children were so startled they jumped straight up in the air and landed on the other side of the dark shadow. "Let's go home," suggested Hazel, but when they turned to go, they saw their own shadows, and of course they knew them. How they laughed then, for who would think of being afraid of a lifeless shadow? By and by they met a workman. He had a dinner pail in his hand, and in his pockets peanuts for the squirrels, for every morning and night he passed through the park. Now the good citizens of the town had made laws that no one should harm a squirrel, and the squirrels knew this. So Hazel and Bushytail were not afraid of the workman, and when he knelt down and held out some nuts to them, they ran straight up to him, chattering all the while. Bushytail took one of the nuts, cracked it with his teeth, and, holding it with both hands, ate very greedily. For you see, the sight of the nuts reminded him he had not eaten any breakfast, and suddenly he became very hungry. Hazel was not a bit hungry, so she put the nut in the pocket of one of her cheeks, which made her look as if she had the mumps. Then she ran up the workman's arm and perched on his shoulder, where her soft, bushy tail brushed against his ears and tickled him in the neck. Poor little Hazel Squirrel! Little did she think the wonderful tree they were looking for was only a dream tree. But how was she to know that all kinds of nuts never did nor ever can grow side by side on the same branch, save only in the wonderland we enter through the gates of sleep? "I don't see your wonderful tree anywhere, Bushytail," she said. "I think it's down this way a little," he answered, and once more they scampered off together, chattering and waving their lovely tails.
Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fighting Moose podcast. Please join us next time as we read another exciting story. Today's music was provided by the artist Analog by Nature, and the audio clips were provided from NASA. For more information to download and or listen to audio or materials from all our recordings, or to contact us, please visit www.thefightingmoose.com, or you can follow the links in the show notes. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a review wherever you get your podcast or on iTunes, and tell a friend. Thank you for your patronage, and as always, try and do a random act of kindness every day.
Mission complete, Houston. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history. It's come to